Terry Savage is a nationally recognized money expert and speaker on the economy, the markets, and personal finance. She writes a weekly newspaper column syndicated by the Tribune Content Agency. Terry also appears regularly on radio and television, commenting on the financial news and markets. Terry co-hosts a weekly podcast, Friends Talk Money, and has more than 25,000 subscribers to her free newsletter. At her website, terrysavage.com, she answers personal financial questions ranging from retirement planning to investing to understanding the latest money headlines. In 2023, Terry made national headlines, appearing on 60 Minutes with her co-author of Social Security Horror Stories, revealing the bullying tactics of Social Security as they attempt to claw back more than $21 billion in overpayments because of mistakes the agency made. Terry is the author of 4 best-selling books on personal finance. The 3rd edition of her best-selling book, The Savage Truth on Money, is currently available on Amazon.com. She is a registered investment advisor. Although she has no clients, nor does she represent any financial products or services, she is truly independent voice for the financial consumer. So please help me welcome Terry Savage and The Savage Truth on Money.
I am so delighted to be here in person today. It's been a long time. I used to be out in the suburbs a lot talking about money and the markets and so forth. And thank you, Tinley Park, for inviting me out here. A special thank you to the mayor, who is obviously doing an incredible job, the village manager and trustees, who I've just met. Carolyn Matera is a resource you should treasure. Also, is there someone here from Wintrust? Because I know they're sponsoring. Hey, Wintrust, thank you for the Wintrust Business Lunch, which I appear on Wednesdays regularly with John Williams. And so many people came up to me and said, oh yeah, we listened to you on the Wintrust Business Lunch. So it's particularly nice to be coming out to Tinley Park because you are known throughout the Chicago community. I come from the central, I live downtown, as a place that is very vibrant, growing. I mean, I think it started with the music because nobody knew who Tinley Park was, but big name acts came out here. And I have heard so much more. In particular, even before I heard the mayor's presentation, I set it up for afterwards. I've heard so much about Harmony Square that I've arranged for a tour before I get back downtown, because who knows when I'll get out here again. So, I acknowledge that we live in some unusual times these days. And you've asked me to come out here for your business breakfast to give an economic outlook, to talk about personal finances a little bit, because that's what I'm going to do, but business and the economy in general. I've been doing that for a long, long time. I really like the mayor's PowerPoint. 15, 20 years ago, I learned PowerPoint. I can create a fabulous PowerPoint. But I didn't want to bore you with charts of GDP and interest rates and whatever. So I went back. I was thinking about what I wanted to say today, kind of a short presentation, and give you time for Q&A. I think we have microphones set up in the audience so that we can do Q&A, because I always think that's the most fun. So I wanted to boil it down, the whole savage truth on money. What could I talk about at this business breakfast that was really appropriate and not bore you with a bunch of slides? So I went back to the old-time ways, and I made one picture. Hopefully, this one picture is going to be worth 1,000 words. My columns are roughly 750 words, so you get a couple columns worth. Here's the one picture. This is your Special K breakfast. I don't know if any of you have kids at home. Special K, I'm told, is still a very popular breakfast. I want to talk about K in dollars and cents terms, and also in historical perspective terms. Now, most of you, I'm sure you're all going to nod when I say this, have heard about the K-shaped economy, right? Yes? Okay. And you know that in general, what we refer to when they talk about the K-shaped economy is that the rich people are up here and the poor people are down here. And how many times have you heard someone talk about the K-shaped economy and say, well, the people that are up here, they may be a little annoyed that they have to pay more to fuel up their jets or their yachts. But they've got the stock market. They're the big investors. They're feeling wealthy. Their homes continue to remain high in value. We aren't having a housing collapse like in 2008, 2010. So this is the top part of the K-shaped economy. And down here are the people who are being hit with what we now know as of this week is a serious return of inflation. And right here in the middle are all the people that are just hanging on desperately, the middle class, trying not to slide down this slide that economic forces are driving them into. Now, this bottom part, this morning we had retail spending numbers came out, about what was expected, maybe a little weaker. Everybody is saying, hey, wait a minute, people are not in trouble. We are sitting here with the stock market at all-time highs, our national debt soaring, and in the middle of a war, and the consumer, this part of the K, and particularly all of this, is still doing well. Retail sales this morning were strong, or about what was expected. But this is a consumer that is carrying a record $1.3 trillion in credit card debt at average annual interest rates of 21%. If you had told someone that 25, 30 years ago, they would have said, we got to pass a law that's usurious. This is a consumer that is now paying 29% more for gasoline, okay? Gasoline up $1.40 a gallon. The latest figure is $4.55 for regular. So consumers who are starting to have to make choices, whether they drive to work or go on vacation. It's not your imagination. Beef is up 14.5% year over year. Coffee, 18.5%. Here's my favorite. This is astounding. Tomatoes, they're imported. 46% increase. I am now planting my tomatoes. I plant tomatoes every summer, but I'm going to plant more this year. And then comes August or September, really, and I've got all these tomatoes, and I don't know what to do with them. I don't can tomatoes. Okay. You're seeing electric bills up 6% so far, but that's just the beginning. Natural gas, we have an abundance of energy in America, but electric bills are driven by natural gas, and electricity is increasingly being used in industrial uses like data centers. So consumers, which are 2/3 of the economy, are living under some incredible pressures. Medical expenses rising, insurance rising. I don't know about property taxes out here. I don't know how you're all doing this. The answer is economic growth. You know that. You've obviously figured that out. Instead of raising taxes on the last 12 people, you just grow the shape of the pie. But why, with all this news, and yesterday's, this week so far, where are we? Only Thursday. It was Tuesday, consumer prices showed up at 3.8% increase in consumer prices. And the producer price index yesterday, a 6% annual increase. And we are just beginning to see the impact of energy, which, you know, goes into everything. I don't have to give you Econ 101. Goes into everything that gets delivered. So if the consumer is already so burdened, mortgage rates remain relatively high. By the way, because of these numbers, interest rates, the 10-year Treasury is now definitely trading at 4.44%. So that's a new high for this move. Why is the stock market at all-time highs? We just had a report that we had the weakest consumer confidence in 20 years. The University of Michigan survey of consumer sentiment, weaker even. That's the one chart I wish I could have brought you, and I just found it. It's lower than it was during the pandemic, and you know how we all felt during the pandemic. Obviously, Tinley Park is a very special place. I did not come to spread doom and gloom. There are always bright spots in every economy, and clearly this is one of them. But how is it, people ask me all the time, that the stock market, and this morning, by the way, the Dow, which we mostly remember, is poised to open up well over 50,000. And the S&P 500 and NASDAQ indexes have been making new all-time highs practically daily for the last few weeks. Why is that happening in the midst of consumers' concerns, rising inflation, news about a war or whatever it is, job concerns about artificial intelligence, and the concerns about political extremisms on both sides, keeping out of politics here? This is something that I think, I'm delighted that you don't spend a lot of time worrying about it, but from judging from my time sitting on radio and TV and getting blog posts and so forth, a lot of people are really worried about what's going on that doesn't seem like anything that's happened before. And I will tell you it's because we haven't looked at that third part of the K. This part. This is the highway of capital investment in a new era of artificial intelligence and technology. And while everybody's focused on the consumers, the ones that are successful and happily enjoying all-time highs in stocks, the ones that are worried about filling up the car to go to work or canceling a vacation, this is trillions of dollars, literally trillions of dollars of investment going into data centers. And data centers is not just some concept like AI is a concept. Data centers are buildings, and it's fiber optics, and Corning, which we thought was a dead company for a long time, is now one of the top performers. Copper is at all-time high prices. I looked up and I saw that Microsoft, Amazon, Google Alphabet, and Meta are spending in the realm of $650 to $700 billion a year of capital expenditures into developing this new economy of the future, which you probably don't feel or notice, but the financial markets feel and notice it. And that is why you have stocks, particularly the tech heavy indexes, at all-time highs. Now, I watched you 5 years ago. If you'd put up a code and said to people, take a picture of that on your screen, everybody would have gone, what? I'm supposed to take a camera and take a picture of that? We are already living there. You probably have ChatGPT or Perplexity on your phone. If you don't, download ChatGPT or Perplexity. There's this whole giant discussion about, is AI going to drive our kids to commit violent crimes? Those are genuine worries. But the fact of the matter is, we are living in a new era. It's going to be tech-dominated. Our tax policy is driving toward that, and that is what's driving the growth of the economy. And that was going to be where I was aiming in my speech, when all of a sudden it hit me that there is another meaning to this K that I posted on this board. And I would like to introduce you to a concept, if you didn't already study it way back in college. So I will ask, and I don't expect to get a big response, does the name Kondratiev mean anything to anyone? Not if you know. Okay. Kondratiev was a famed Russian economist in the early era of the 1930s, when communism was poised to take over the world and thought it would rule the world. But Kondratiev postulated that the world moved in cycles. Google it, Kondratieff. And I was fortunate to study economics from a man named Donald Hoppe, who lived in northern Illinois, and he wrote the Kondratiev wave theory, the definitive Bible. I went to a lot of dinners. I hosted a bunch of dinners where he would expound on the Kondratiev wave. It's a capital goods cycle. I'm not going to bore you with Econ 101. It's not accurately measured or defined, but presumed to last about 54 years anyway between 40 and 60 years on average. You can look it up. And what this is, now you can intuit this. Okay, I gave you the intellectual. Oh, by the way, the Soviets killed Kondratiev because he postulated that economies moved in cycles, and they just wanted to believe that communism would, go straight to the moon. So I think what we are in now is not in an ordinary business cycle that you remember of recessions and booms, of stock market, bull markets, and bear markets. But I would like to bring your attention to the possibility that we are in a major transition here that changes the way you need to think and should make you actually very optimistic if you're willing to understand the cycle. Let me give you a little history, because I realize I'm delving into territory that nobody expected. The first Kondratiev wave period, this 54-year cycle, try 1780 to 1830. Think back to your history, American History 101. Steam power, mechanization, the Erie Canal, the cotton gin. It transformed America. 1830 to 1880, that was the era where we built the railroads across the country. It was a 50-year period. There were huge dislocations. But you have to understand the long swing of history. 1880 to 1930, another 50-ish year cycle of electrification, of cheap steel, of the telephone, global communications through the telegraph. I mean, that's 1930, that's only 100 years ago, and your grandparents were alive then. And then 1930 to 1970, which was the era of intercontinental roads. I mean, our road system, autos, oils, transportation, petroleum, universal electricity only came in that period. I mean, the rural electrification programs really only finished up in the 1970s. Since then, we've had 50 years, roughly, of the information era, where the internet and digital communications transformed our lives. And you and I, because you're here and because you could take that QR code, we get that. We've managed. Now, my father could never manage more than a flip phone. I mean, I thought he was pretty cool to have a cell phone. I mean, he died at 96 a few years back. But the point is, we in this room understand and live in the era of digital communications. And what I'm saying to you is, and you know how that transformed our lives. I'm old enough to remember when color TV came in, because I was on Channel 26. And that's when they went color, was when I started on Channel 26. That's a long time ago. You can't find my gray hairs, but I've been around for a long time. You know that. So we are all living proof that you can change and your life can be transformed and can be better. I mean, when's the last time I went to a mall? There's Amazon. Everything's there. I'm sorry about that, Harmony Square. I'm going to Harmony Square. But your shopping malls, I mean, think of the Cranes just did an article on shopping malls around Chicago. They were the highlight of the 70s and 80s. And now they're closing down or being used as walking places for seniors or medical centers or whatever. Our lives have been transformed in this information era. And now, like it or not, and I still know some people who won't use a smartphone, but they're older, we are moving into the era of artificial intelligence. That's what the stock market is telling you. This is a huge swing of history. And in this era, it will transform your business if you harness it. Now, I wrote a column and a newsletter. My newsletter's free. You could sign up at terrysavage.com, and I called it Something's Gotta Give. How could the stock market be at all-time highs and consumers be buried in debt and in so much trouble and dealing with higher gas prices and so forth? The fact is that it's like asking a fish, how's the water? When you're in it, the fish goes, the water? If you're over at the pool next weekend, it's a little early and you're wondering if it's too cold, but it's going to open Memorial Day, someone's going to say, how's the water? because you can make a comparison. You have to step back and figure out how the water is for your business and your personal finances as we enter into this new pool, this new generation. Baby boomers, I remember doing columns when baby boomers turned 65. There were 10,000 baby boomers turning, turning 65 every day. Now I just wrote something, baby boomers are turning 80. That's astounding. And Gen X is, most of you, many of you are in this room, Gen X. You grew up in the information age. It wasn't as shocking for you. You don't remember when there were no smartphones and there was no color TV. It was like my grandparents, I guess, were shocked by jet planes. But you, because you're in it and you don't recognize the water, need to think about what the next pool is going to feel like. Again, I know many of you have reservations about AI and what it can do, but it will inevitably transform the way we transact, the way we communicate. Now, I was thinking about what I heard this morning when the mayor was talking about Tinley Park and how you've developed this touch point of communication in Harmony Square. Just because the AI era is here, you may have either advertently or inadvertently stumbled upon the secret of success in that era, which is that when everything is in the ether, humanity demands touch points. And that is the secret of a band shell or of not a big shopping mall that's impersonal, but a community square with local stores and restaurants where people actually, at a rooftop, whatever it is that you're so proud of, that where people get together. Because there is a way for your business to acknowledge both the era of artificial intelligence, of demand information, of huge change, and yet to profit by it. Now, I just want to touch for a minute on personal finances. The baby boom generation, I mean, the lesson of the last 50 years in the stock market was don't sell, keep investing. And I was really fortunate to get there at the beginning. The beginning 401k accounts started in the early 1980s, and you had to make a choice whether to contribute. I would give speeches, oh, you've got to contribute. Then employers made matches. Then there was, what'll I put it in? Hey, you don't have to beat the market, just buy the whole market. Every 401k had a Standard & Poor's 500 stock index fund. Just make it automatic. Savage truth, if you don't see it, you won't spend it. Then contribute up to getting the employer match. And I've lived through 3 bear markets that took the Dow Jones Industrials down 48 to 50%. The first one was in 73, 74, when I was the first woman trader on the floor of the Chicago Board Options Exchange, the first woman member. I remember looking up at this guy, Paul was his name. And in those days, we had the Fabulous 50. They were called the Vestal Virgins. There were stocks like McDonald's and Digital Equipment, and I just remember the names. And they were buy them and hold them forever. And when the market went down 50%, those stocks weren't supposed to go down. I was shocked. McDonald's went from a high of 87 to a low of 16 and something. I remember that then, and I remember it because I served 15 years on the board of directors of McDonald's, and I used that story. And I remember looking at Paul. He was very tall, and he was old. I knew he was old because he had gray hair and he was balding. And I said to him, Paul, they all went down. All those stocks went down. Where did all the money go? I'll never forget. He looked out at me and he said, well, my dear, it went to money heaven. Now, here's a caveat. I'm extraordinarily optimistic about the future of America. We have the lead in AI. If you want 48 things to worry about, including the meeting in China today, I can give those to you. I'm not forecasting stocks or the stock market. America has come through all those eras of change, all those Kondratiev waves on top. And in the one in which I have lived and you and I have participated, we've had a bull market that's gone from in the early 1980s, the Dow was 1,000. It's gone up to where we are this morning at 50,000. Through 3 bear markets that I know of, 73, 74, 87 was a scary bear market, 99 was a scary market, 2008 the Dow was down 48%. But now, if you're a baby boomer or a leading edge Gen Xer, you're looking toward your own retirement. So let me wave this flag of caution. Waves take a long time. We've had an incredible bull market. You weren't a genius. All you had to do was participate, and everybody did eventually in 401ks and IRAs. You might consider your own risk tolerance as you're approaching retirement or in retirement, and your exposure to the stock market, whether it's in your IRA and a target date fund that's still at age 65, 70, 80% invested in stocks. A word of caution. While I believe America will go on and rise to new highs, every bull market, and we've had this long one, has been interrupted by serious declines. And if that decline comes at the moment when you are planning to withdraw money to live on, it will send you into a panic. So while I'm optimistic about the opportunities for your businesses, especially here, especially because you're all local and you all understand the importance that community will have in an era that's increasingly in the ether. So there are fortunes to be made, businesses to be built, customers to serve. You are ahead of that curve. On your own personal finances, if you're younger, yes, keep investing. You don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to follow Kramer when he says buy this or sell that. You don't have to care what the chip stocks are doing. Just buy the S&P 500. Over the long run, you've always come out ahead. But if you are at that stage where you're going, wow, Mildred, I never dreamed we'd have $1.1 million in our 401k. Well, I leave you with 2 words of someone who I think you'll respect, even though you think I'm just guessing at it. Number 1, Warren Buffett, at this moment, is sitting on $350 billion worth of cash. He owns more Treasury bills than the Treasury. He hasn't given up on the American dream, but he is hoarding cash at this moment. He, of course, is in the category of avant baby boomer. And then I leave you, though, with his words, which he has reiterated most recently again, as he just went into his first year without being chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. And which he said to me on a tape that's on my website today when I interviewed him back in 2008, 2009 at the depths of the market. Nobody ever got rich betting against America. America will survive and prosper, and so will you if you plan, save, and invest. You are in a unique position to do just that. But if you're at a stage where you're concerned about leaving all your chips on the table, this might be a time to evaluate your personal risk. And that is the savage truth on money as I see it. You can hear me at noon on Wednesdays with John Williams, thank you, Wintrust, and on Tuesday afternoons with Lisa Dent, WGN-TV. But I hope I've stirred up some questions. And do we have the microphones out there, Carolyn? Okay, they're right in the aisles? Okay, there's one. There's a microphone there. Have I stirred up any questions? Yes.
Can you just speak a little bit to I know it's overall with the economy, but will there be a big change with the Federal Reserve?
Will there be a big change with the new chair of the Federal Reserve? I think actually Kevin Warsh is not a newcomer. He was, of course, a member of the Federal Reserve Board. He is going to be faced with the challenge of a rising deficit. Our national debt, we will add $2 trillion this year, moving our national debt up to $39 trillion. We need to finance that. We need to borrow money. We are faced with inflation numbers that are undeniable. I don't think Warsh will make the mistake of calling them transitory. I heard the Treasury Secretary early this morning in an interview saying, well, this will just be a few months. So a lot depends on the energy situation, whether Iran whether they close down Cargill and they close down the refineries, that could take a much longer period for energy to recover, leading to higher prices for longer in energy, leading to inflation. And I believe Kevin Warsh not only is only one man on the board, but that he understands how important the value of the dollar is and the independence of the Fed is. So I'm not worried about him. I'm kind of glad he's there. Poor Jerome Powell. He's been squashed. It's enough already for him. I hope he'll leave. I think if you were being persecuted, we sat at the table talking about some members of the Illinois legislature and the pushback against them. It was somebody who uses the power of government to push back against individuals at an obvious, whether it be James Comey, Seychelles, or I mean, who here has done a home remodel job that hasn't had a cost overrun? I want to meet you because you can handle my next job. Okay? So I think that there's a lot of personal animosity, and I don't blame him for wanting to be protected as long as he can. Anyone else? You can shout it out if you want, and I'll repeat it. Did I stun you into silence? Yes, in the back. How does our national debt, about a third of our national debt is owned by foreign central banks. And foreign central banks actually have been reducing their holdings. China and Japan, I think Japan's now larger than China. But we live still in a dollar-denominated world. And I used to, in the olden days, say, what if they sold off our treasury bills? What are they going to buy? Gold? If they were going to buy gold, and central banks have been buying gold, which is why it's around $5,000 an ounce now. But there hasn't been a giant rush out of the U.S. dollar. This is going to be a very, very interesting time because we are now the world's largest debtor. We are dependent on the kindness of strangers, and that could prove to be important at some point. But I don't think it's immediately important. We'll just have to pay more, have higher interest rates, which adds to the debt. Do I think one day there'll be a day of reckoning? Yeah, I want to live long enough to see it. And then again, I don't. Someone else in the back had a question? Anyone? Okay, well, I invite you to post your question. Oh, there's another one. Go ahead. Student loan debt. Boy, this has been a political basketball. For many years, I'll tell you when this started. When my son went to UCLA and I lived in Illinois, and someone from California, because my column runs in a bunch of papers out there, said their kid wanted to go, I don't know, was it Illinois or Michigan or Indiana, instead of being in-state in California. And I just went, this whole and we're talking maybe 25, 30 years ago. That's when I started to notice that the price of education subsidized by federal student loans, which are guaranteed by the taxpayer, was pushing up the cost of tuition and causing a generation to take on debt. I came from not a wealthy family, and I went to the University of Michigan. I had no student loans, and when I wanted to go to graduate school, my dad said, "But I can't afford that. You have two younger brothers." Student loan debt is just a burden that has destroyed a generation's ability to buy homes, to want to have children, and get married. Now, when the Biden administration was going to just blanket forgive it, there was a moral question about that. But the social question was so urgent. And the backlash against that forgiveness has been a move to take away many of the restructuring options, which are disappearing as of next month, and to force collections now of federal student loans. I hope the pendulum swings somewhere back to the middle. And if you in your family have someone who is still burdened with student loans, there is one person in Chicago. We have her on WGN Noon Business Hour regularly. Her name is Rae Kaplan, RAEKAPLAN. She has a website, which I helped her build, because I knew there was so much demand. And she is the one, RaeKaplan.com, who can help you deal with student loans. Now, if you're a parent who has a PLUS loan, it occurs to me, you need to act like this week, because the rules and the opportunities for repaying Parent Plus loans are changing, and I believe it's June 30th. It's a huge burden on, and I think now what we're seeing is the pendulum is swinging, by the way, and universities are trying to get students, and many smaller schools are closing. So, but that's a long-term economic pendulum, and you have student loans, you have to deal with them right now before June 30th. Yes?
Do you feel like universities still relevant?
I love you for that question. I was going to mention this. The question was, do you think universities are still relevant? Now, back in the day, I would have answered this much differently. I believe that our students need a broad-based education in history and in our government. I mean, you can't, if those who do not learn from history are destined to repeat it. I thought that a broad-based education was essential to just living in the world. I think we are approaching a time where parents will not go into debt and students will not go into debt. I stopped contributing to the University of Michigan many years ago when the American Studies major, which I majored in, was giving courses like comic books in American history. My mother forbid comic books in our house, you know, and that's what kids read, comic books. I watched the education program change and I was appalled. So we had students paying a lot of money, going into a lot of debt for an education that didn't really lead them to jobs, but the jobs were there. And I know what I'm going to say to you is if you had I said this to a man recently whose 18-year-old son became an electrician's apprentice. Instead, he was accepted at college. And I said, good for you, because AI is not going to put in a new fuse box for me. And I need a fuse box to run my AI. So yes, I see you nodding there, and I think that we're about to reevaluate education, but that should not stop us from holding our public schools, our high schools, and our community schools to a much better job of teaching history and our government, because the reason we stand to lose our democracy here 250 years in is because our children don't value the free enterprise system that created all this prosperity. When I see polls of college students saying, well, communism isn't so bad or socialism isn't so bad, don't get me on a soapbox opera, I'm going to leave right now. But when I see mayors, Chicago and New York, saying, well, we're just going to have grocery stores in every neighborhood. I mean, grocery stores work on the thinnest of margins. That's the opposite of what you're doing here. You are creating incentives and the climate for growth, which creates a prosperous tax base, which can invest in your schools, which can invest in the community and draw additional people here. You have more people, and all those new apartments are going to pay taxes, whether they shop, whether they use utilities. You are in the cycle of growth. The only thing that will continue the cycle of growth in America, so I'll leave you with this thought, is if each one of you who clearly, because you're here, understands that, as opposed to we will raise your taxes and we'll give everybody everything and we'll teach our kids that they should have their hands out. You need to teach the next generation. Each and every one of you needs to, I don't know if Junior Achievement's active out here in the schools, but you need to get involved, and parents go to school day and teach your kids. All these businesses surviving 20, 30, 40, 60, 70 years. That's what builds community prosperity, not government handouts. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in this regard, but the responsibility is on you and anybody else you see. This is not Democrat versus Republican. This is understanding what made America great. Opportunities are created by people who work hard and who work smart. That's you. Spread the word. That's the savage truth. Thank you very much.